This video actually isn't what I planned on making, but after troubleshooting my way through things, I thought it was an interesting bit of problem solving and sussing out of my issues. The layout work is not all perfect off the bat, and explaining how I discovered the root of a problem might be interesting to follow along to. It also might help someone else trying to figure out a similar issue. Starting off, my plan was just to move this number 10 switch 2 inches towards the yard, as this is where my derailment issue was occurring. I needed to pop the track off of the caulking, then reverse the order of the 2-inch sectional track and the switch. When I removed the section of turn I had heading into the yard, I noticed it was out of gauge and it wasn't usable as track. But I like having pieces of track to paint a rusty tone and leave near the main line to look like old sections of track abandoned along the main. It makes for a nice touch of scenery. Here is about when I started to notice that my issue wasn't just the S-bend as I initially thought. Back to the start of the layout, I had some issues on this turn, but couldn't quite narrow down what it was. But today, as I tried testing a car running through here, I could tell something wasn't quite right based on how the car was hopping through the switch. And for the rest of this, I'll switch to my iPad audio so I can write over top of my thinking. So it turns out there were actually 3 different problems going on. And I went back to this older picture to explain. And it's funny though, because when I start looking at the layout from these older images, you get some different things that stand out. So for one, I can see on this siding, it's actually not lined up all that well. But I have used that switch hundreds of times now and had 0 problems. So I'm going to leave that. It's not perfectly in line, but clearly I'm not having a problem. So that's not going to change. The problem lies on this section of track here. And as I said, it's actually a handful of problems. So problem number 1, this number 10 switch was actually out of gauge. And I didn't recognize that until I was looking at it closer. And I was doing a test with just an old box car, and it was jumping a little bit and hopping in a very weird way. So I started to look closer and broke out my NMRA gauge, and then I could see that there was actually a problem right around here, and it's this specific piece of track that is just slightly too far out. So both, when trains were coming straight, they were struggling to stay on the tracks. But also, I mean, this is an old photo, this track's in place now, but as a train would come out of the staging yard and it navigated this S-turn, it was it was getting pulled off the track. As the weight was shifting inwards here around the bend, it was pulling cars to the left and the wheels were slipping off and it was causing derailments. So problem number 1 was that this piece was out of gauge. Problem number 2 in blue, I just mentioned that one, was the fact, I'll do it way out of line, but was the fact that I had an S-turn here. So as trains were navigating either in or out of the staging yard here, there was an S-bend. And actually, funny now that I mentioned that, going into the staging yard never had a problem. That's because the weight was shifting outwards, and as the axles were navigating the switch, they weren't derailing. It was fine. It was only heading out of the yard that I had a problem because the weight was shifting inwards and it was pulling cars off of the track here. So problem 2 in blue was the S-bend. And then a smaller part of the problem, but problem 3, was that there was a slight dip in the track around here where I highlighted it in green. So right around this bend here, so to do a tiny bit of super elevation, you can see I added in just bits of painter's tape on the outside of the curve. Just 1 piece to begin and then 2 pieces on the middle of the curve. In doing that, it gave just a hint of super elevation to add a little bit of realism to the appearance. Exiting the turn, the super elevation ended, which that wasn't the problem. The problem was that somehow this section right around here, heading into that turn, was just slightly down. There was a dip. I don't know how it got there. Maybe I leaned on the track when I was installing it, or I might have just bent it on accident when I was putting it in. But somewhere between here to here, there was a dip. So those three problems, when they were combined, were giving me the issue of derailments when leaving the yard here. All of that I discovered when I was trying to move the switch over, because I thought the problem was just the S-bend, but it turns out it was three different things all in one. So it makes for an easy fix though, in that I need to put in a new turnout here. Unfortunately, I don't have one on hand, so I have to order one, and that delays my work for now. Then I can install the new switch. It's going to be slightly back, just a couple of inches. And then rather than using sectional curve here, I think I'm actually going to use flex track. That way I can maybe minimize the harshness of the S-bend too. That's my theory anyway, that this exiting or going into the yard is still going to have a curve here, just a slight turn radius on that switch. But if I can ease the transition from that curve into this curve with a straighter bit and then easing into the curve with some flex track, hopefully that will minimize my, well, not minimize, hopefully that will end my derailment problem entering and exiting the yard. So that is where I stand. The layout now has no track here. The yard lead is still there. The engine facility is on hold until I get this problem resolved. And that all depends on getting some new parts in. So that's where I stand.